All right, what's going on, everybody? Keith Niebuhr with Gators Online, and this is the Talking Gators Recruiting Show, live edition. We've got a special guest today. It's Blake Alderman, who for years you've known him. He's covered the Florida Gators for a couple different sites, most recently 8 years with 24/7. But this morning, Blake joined the team at Gators Online, so we're going to get to know Blake a little bit. Unfortunately for you, he's quite boring. And then we're going to jump into some Florida Gators recruiting, which is what y'all really want to talk about anyways. Blake, first of all, congratulations. We're happy to have you here. It's always a tough thing when you're leaving one company to go work for another. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background. I know you went to the University of Florida. You're from Polk County, but what would you want readers to know about you?
Yeah, just that, grew up in Central Florida in the Polk County area, like you said. Grew up going to games as a kid around Gainesville. Just spent a lot of time there. I met my wife in Gainesville. I met lifelong friends in Gainesville. So I have a soft spot for UF. I have a soft spot for just the connections that I've made there over the years in my life. So, 2 kids, wife. I've got the family working on that. It's covering recruiting. It's a fun time dealing with that sometimes. But I'm fired up to be here. I'm fired up to work with you, Corey, Zach, all the guys over at Gators Online. So it's been a busy first day, and I'm excited for the team we have, and I'm excited for the coverage that we can bring.
Yeah, like I said, always a little bit surreal. It feels weird, those moments where you're leaving one job for another, but you're doing a great job today. And one of the big stories that you had today, well, first of all, you've done a bunch of great work already. You put in some RPM picks projecting recruits to Florida. You did a 411 story on Florida Gators recruiting, kind of where things are right now across the board. But the 10 most wanted, that's what people love. They love the 10 most wanted. And I hate to give our colleague at On3 any credit, Luke Stampini, but I have to because I believe he was one of the first people to really do the most wanted in the way that we currently do it. And so you've presented a bunch of targets, prospects that Florida, one, they got to be legit dudes. Two, Florida's got to have a realistic chance of landing them, and then you rank them in order. Let's go over that list a little bit, and really let's just start at the top because the number one guy is somebody that is a local prospect. Jari Carr is an interior lineman. He's from Bradenton IMG Academy, but he grew up in Ocala. And in fact, I believe his mother went to North Marion High School, if my memory's correct, which is only about 15 minutes from Gainesville. So he's really from that northern part of Ocala that is, on the way to Gainesville. What can you tell us about the recruitment of Jari Carr, 4-star interior lineman, and why you feel like he is number one on the 10 most wanted list, Blake?
Well, I think whenever you look at the offensive line this year, they return a lot of starters, and I believe 4 or 5 will exhaust their eligibility after the season. And the pitch that Florida's had for a lot of these offensive linemen that they've been recruiting this cycle is that, look, we're losing a lot of guys. We need tackles. We need guards. We need Jake Slaughter is an All-American center, and he's going to exhaust his eligibility after the season. So I think whenever you need guys from interior to right there on the edge at the tackle position, you're going to have to take a wide net, or cast a wide net of offers. You're going to have to target a lot of guys. So with Jari Carr, I think that, again, you have the ties to Gainesville area, being from Ocala. He's a guy that they offered extremely early in the process. He's someone that they're extremely high on as far as like a target on their board. So the guy is a regular visitor. He's been a regular visitor even after he moved to Bradenton. I think this year it's 3-4 visits, somewhere around there, that he's made it up there. There was one time in the spring where he was there one weekend and then turned around and came back the next weekend. So just the consistency of the visits, he's made the need that they have for offensive linemen, whether you're a tackle, center, or guard. I think he projects more as a guard at the next level. But, just those ties there. Mom is a pro Florida person. I don't know that she's, twisting his arm and going to force him to go to Florida or anything like that. But it certainly helps having someone that's grown up around the area just like him, that's vocal about Florida, that's going to be, at least positive and have positive things to say about them. So I just think there's a lot of boxes that he checks off. Certainly the need that he has, and just being a guy like that is visited so much and someone that they want so badly.
we're talking about Blake's 10 most wanted Florida recruiting targets, which he published this morning at GatorsOnline.com. If you like what we're doing, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button below. We're going to try to do a lot more of these. I know I say this all the time, but we've sort of been understaffed for the last 5 or 6 months. Now we've got a full staff again. It should allow us to do more live programming, more video programming, and things of that nature. And so we're going to be, like I said, we're going to keep trying to roll these things out. So, Blake, let's go to number 2 on the list. I'm sorry, I got somebody texting me right now, and it always throws you for a loop. So, Rodney Cleveland, Blake, I want you to go into great detail because I'm going to have to call somebody really quick. But Rodney Cleveland, 4-star defensive lineman from Birmingham Parker. Now, you wouldn't think that Florida would have a great shot getting a guy out of Birmingham, but he's visited a lot. All right, he's visited a lot. I think he's a former Bama commit? Refresh my memory here.
Yes.
Bama's still involved. Auburn's heavily involved. What makes you think Florida has a chance to land him? Because you've got him number 2 in 10 most wanted right now. I'm going to step away real quick here. So take it away, buddy.
Yeah, again, trench players. You look at the defensive line. Florida has consistently added some guys. I think a little bit earlier on in the Napier tenure that it was more portal, getting guys that can play right now. I think that they've started to get the depth there. Some of these young guys we saw in the spring game, like DeAndre Robinson, even Stephon Shivers, those young guys, whether they're freshman, redshirt, freshman, sophomore, what have you, those guys are starting to get in the program. They're starting to build that depth. Those guys, it's like turning the page, especially even after this season coming up, to where you need to continue to bring those types of players in. So trenches are always going to be important in the SEC and really in any football that you play. So you've got a guy like Rodney Cleveland. He's a guy that is a top target for Florida. That's a top tier target for them on the defensive line. He's visited a lot. He's been very vocal about Florida. So I would say that there's easily some mutual interest there. And I think a guy that you put him in number 2, he's coming off of the recent visit to Florida for the spring game, and he had Florida very high on his list all the way up to number 1. He was able to speak with Corey Bender of Gators Online after that spring game visit. And, came away Florida's number 1. So that's kind of an easy one for me to put up there whenever you've got someone that is talking so highly about Florida and putting them in that high spot. Need at the position, continues to visit someone that they like. He likes them in turn.
Yeah, that was some great scoop by Corey. That's who called back. So actually, I had to call him real quick and say, "What's going on? We're recording a show," and he said it was a butt dial. So I got Corey cracks me up. But that was a great scoop by Corey to get that Rodney Cleveland saying, "Hey, right now Florida's my leader." And we need to point out, Blake, we're thrilled to have you, obviously, at Gators Online, but it's a team effort. I'm still going to help. You and Corey are going to be crushing recruiting. So we all work together, and we're constantly on the phone looking for things. So let's get to a couple of questions. This is kind of a haphazard show. We just wanted to introduce Blake, get everybody thinking about recruiting, because, Blake, the contact period started on the 15th. The portal window opened yesterday. Official visits are going to begin in the next few weeks. So this is now recruiting season. This is now roster growth, roster development, roster rebuild, and all those things into one. But Luke Mann, one of our favorite posters at Gators Online, has a question. Does Devin Jackson, we got to that, Devin Jackson decommitted from the Florida Gators this morning. 3-star safety. Blake, you and I probably think he's more of a 4-star type. We've seen him at various camps. Great body, tall guy, 6'2", a little over 6'2". Great frame, arm length, all that stuff. But does Devin Jackson leaving the class, just ask, have anything to do with your RPM, with the RPM picks? I believe you and Corey Bender have made for Florida to land C.J. Hester, another defensive back from the Cocoa area of Florida. Lucas thinks it's not a coincidence that you guys put in picks for C.J. Hester and Devin Jackson left. Any connection there, or is it just one kid doing their own thing?
I would say that, sure, defensive backs. I don't know that there's necessarily a connection, especially when Devin Jackson's projected as a safety. Florida does have the tendency to move guys around in the secondary, so versatility is key, but safety is his room. He was a Vinny Sinceri guy, so clearly a safety target for Florida. And C.J. Hester, another guy that does have a lot of position flexibility, but I think he's more of a guy that's going to bounce between corner and star. So kind of apples to oranges. The only real similarities there for me is that they're clearly defensive backs, but they play different positions. So I don't really know that there's any ties or any sort of ripple effect there. Just two guys. It just so happened to happen on the same day. So, but two different position guys there. So I wouldn't put any connection there.
Okay, and I just want to add, I think we're hearing the same thing. This show is about Blake, by the way, not me, but we're kind of hearing the same thing that Florida talked to Jackson a couple days ago. Felt like he was going to stay in the boat, and kind of something changed yesterday. But feeling from what I'm told, and I think Blake, if you want to add to this, you can. Florida still feels like they're very much in the game with him, and there's probably a decent chance, or better than decent chance, they'll circle back and he'll end up at Florida. But we'll see. I mean, every school has different needs, and if you have different needs, that means you have different NIL valuations for kids. So that's the newest variable to all this recruiting stuff in the last couple of years. Blake, you think Florida still got a chance with Devin Jackson?
I do. I expect him to still take his official visit that he's had set. I know he's talked about taking some others, and December, January, somewhere around there, that he did start, like, offers were pouring in left and right. So you can understand a guy that did make an early commitment. Early commitments mean less and less as the years go on, at least in my opinion. A guy that made that early decision, continued to add a lot of offers. And the fact that he's still planning to take that Florida official visit tells me that Florida's not out of the race for him. We have to obviously see where he visits, who else, kind of how the table setting is of this recruitment. But I expect Florida to have a seat at that table.
Well, and we think that Nebraska is a school heavily involved. LSU, did he recently?
Yes.
He's recently visited LSU. What about Miami? Because you would think they need DBs. Former Florida defensive back coach Will Harris is down there now. Is that another school to watch? Are those kind of three?
I would
to watch?
say so. Yeah,
Okay.
I would say so. And I mean, again, a lot of offers there. I know he's mentioned Oregon before, hasn't been there. Obviously, there's a lot of distance there. I haven't really sifted through the entirety of where things sit there, but I would say those schools you mentioned would be the main ones that come to mind for me.
And he may not know. He may have said, him and his camp. We always have to say him and his camp now, but they may have said, hey, let's just make sure, let's put the name out there so people know you're available, and let's see who comes. Because if a kid out of Orlando is committed to Florida and teams think it's solid, Southern Cal, Arizona State, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, they may say this isn't worth the effort. But if he decommits from the school, they may say, you know what, let's take another look at this guy. It may be fair game now, or open season on him. So something to watch. There could be some new schools. He's a talented player. In fact, he just competed at a Big 7 event in Dallas last weekend. And Cody Belair, one of our main national analysts, not reporter, he's a reporter too, but he's an analyst. This is a guy that worked for some major college programs who evaluates talent for On3. And he said, hey, he had a great weekend. They didn't give up a lot of passes, a lot of catches. They didn't throw his way much because of the arm length, and he was sticking with guys. So he's a talent, and I believe Florida had him as a high-tier prospect. Jim wants to comment. Welcome to the team, to Blake. And I guess he's thanking you for condensing your search, or his search, for Gator News. Jim, we appreciate the comment. All right, Jim's got another one here. Let's see. Whoops, you can't even see our faces here. All right. Whatever the first part is, but Florida only has 2 commitments right now. So let's say 2 commitments in April doesn't worry Jim. It looks like Billy Napier is going to continue increasing his blue chip ratio. Stars matter, but development matters more, and this staff seems to be doing just that. Blake, we asked you this question in your introductory Q&A this morning. At the time, Florida had 3 commitments, and now Florida only has 2. You're bad luck, Blake. You've already caused Florida to lose a commitment here, but
I was waiting for that one.
Is it? Well, look, there's somebody out there that probably thinks that's true, but is there any concern? I mean, I don't think so. I mean, Florida flipped a dozen guys late in the cycle last year, and they're going to. A couple things I learned, Blake. I should let you do the time, but they're going to recruit guys whether they're committed elsewhere or not, all the way to the end. And 2, I think they're big into senior evaluations at Florida, where a lot of schools aren't anymore. Let's get our class locked up and move on. And Florida says, wait a second, the development from the junior to senior year to the senior year is significant, and we may have guys as a program move up our list and other guys move down. And we're going to go after the guys, Daniel Pierre-Louis, people like that, who are risers. Greg Smith from 2 years ago. We're going to go after some risers. But Blake, is 2 commitments a concern right now for Florida?
Not for me. I mean, I understand the concerns that fans would have, but like I said, early commitments mean less and less as the years go on. NIL is obviously a thing that's discussed during those official visits. I have always viewed the panic button, hitting the panic button, or whether you should or shouldn't. Let's look at that whenever it's after official visit season, after this wave of commitments happen. These guys all set, they take their official visits, they set their dates, and they start going left and right. I always gauge where the class is at right before the season. After that wave of commitments, any guys that want to get things nipped in the bud right before the start of their senior season, because a lot of guys want to do that. And even then, guys still take visits after the fact. It happens all the time. And like you said, Florida flipped guys left and right that made those summertime commitments. So I always gauge where things are at after those official visits. You want to have the majority or the nucleus of your class kind of wrapped up so that whenever the season rolls around, because players, recruits have their own high school senior seasons to worry about. Florida's coaching staff obviously has their own season to worry about. So recruiting sort of, for lack of a better term, goes on the back burner, I guess. So I always gauge things coming out of the summer right before the fall. And if things aren't where they need to be, then we can push the panic button. But I'm not pushing it in April.
All right. So again, we are joined by Blake Alderman, newest addition to Gators Online, but you already all know who he is. Spent the last 8 years doing great work at 24/7, which, by the way, we have a lot of great respect for what they do over there. Both of us have worked there. I am Keith Niebuhr. If you like what we're doing, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button below. Make sure, leave a comment, positive, negative. I usually just go through and delete the negative ones anyway, but there's a lot of them usually directed right at me. But, we got so much going on at Gators Online today. You're going to want to go there and check it out. Portal news, multiple on-3 recruiting prediction machine projections for Florida to land certain recruits. So recruiting coverage, team coverage, we got it all. The basketball news today. Blake, a couple other things. Let's go back through the top 10. We'll just keep you for 5 more minutes. You got a lot more stories to write. Number 3 on your 10 most wanted, cornerback CJ Hester out of Cocoa, Florida, 4-star defensive lineman Valden. How do you pronounce his last name? Sohn?
I say Sone, and if it's wrong, then he hasn't corrected me yet. So he's either very nice or I'm spot on.
Another European player he is. 4-star cornerback CJ Brana, if I'm pronouncing that right, a Nebraska commit from Windermere, Florida. 4-star defensive lineman Kendall Gervil from Fort Myers. 4-star tight end Henry Kent from Georgia. 4-star linebacker Malik Morris. Boy, he's got a good-looking frame on him. He's out of Lake, Florida. Number 9, 5-star safety Braylon Womack, a guy that Florida's really made a lot of progress with since they hired Vinny Sinceri to coach defensive backs months ago. And 4-star offensive tackle Kenye Pepe from Bradenton IMG Academy. He's a West Coast kid, but he comes in at the number 10 spot. Out of that list, what's kind of the guy that you think, they're not giving this guy a lot of it. I mean, people aren't giving Florida much of a chance, but I think maybe they got a good chance or a decent chance. Good chance to me means you're getting a guy. So a guy on your 10 most wanted, people aren't really talking about. You wouldn't be surprised if he ended up in the Florida Gators recruiting class.
It's hard to pick just one because I'm down to about 2 when I thought about this, and it was CJ Brona and then Hezi Kent. Both of those guys. So CJ Brona is the 4-star cornerback, defensive back, right there out of that Central Florida area. He's been committed in Nebraska since I think it was November of last year. Obviously, some coaching changes happened at Nebraska. Offers have still rolled in. He's still taking some official visits. I think he's been to Florida twice this spring and has the official visit set for the summer. Just ran, I don't remember the time. It was he set a PR at Florida Relays, which is the track tournament that takes place in Gainesville over there, right next to the football facility. So he was able to do that, set a PR there in the 100-meter dash, popped in over there to meet with the coaching staff. So I think that Florida and Florida State, both of them are pushing for him, trying to flip him. Penn State's another. But I think that the 2 in-state schools sort of making some noise there. And I think that maybe he's one that's not talked about enough just because Florida offered him in like March or something like that. So that was a Deron Wilson offer once he joined Florida staff as their new cornerbacks coach. So I think that in a short span of time, Florida has made up a lot of ground. They obviously still have to close. They still have to flip him. But I think the early returns, at least here, and what Florida's been able to do so far are positive. And for Hezi Kent, I think he's almost like a unicorn to me. Like he's a guy that is, you look at him and you're like, that guy's probably an offensive tackle or an offensive lineman, but he's a tight end and he's down to 5 schools. Those 5 schools are the ones that were recruiting him as a tight end. He didn't want to hear the offensive tackle thing. I think he could play there easily, but you watch his film and he's a guy that's kind of a jumbo athlete type of guy. He's got the frame where he's a big body guy. He's someone that I think when you look at what Florida wants in a tight end, they want some of those guys that have some athleticism, can catch and all that. They want someone that can help in the blocking game. And I think Kent checks off a lot of those boxes. I think there was even some clips of him playing like some running back or some wildcat quarterback. So you look at him and you're like, man, this guy's probably a blocker, if not an offensive lineman, but he's got some movement to him. So I think that of the 5 schools, Alabama, Florida, Miami, Texas, and Florida State, maybe I think were the ones in there. I don't know, but I think Miami and Florida are for sure the two schools, in my mind at least, that are in the best standing right there. He has been to Miami and Florida both this spring. He's got a really strong connection with Russ Callaway, Florida's offensive coordinator and tight ends coach, and he has been made an absolute priority by Callaway. So I don't know the exact number of visits that he's taken overall to just all the schools there, but he's been to Florida a lot, and I think that they've done an excellent job recruiting him. Billy Napier is involved in recruiting him. They could potentially want to take two tight ends this cycle, and I think that Kent is one of those guys that sort of checks off the boxes, like I said, of being someone that can help in the run game, but also having enough skills and athleticism to help in the passing game.
Well, Blake, for the first 19 minutes of the show, I had your name spelled wrong on the bottom scroller. You didn't mention it to me, or you didn't notice. So I'm hoping nobody else noticed either. But it's Blake Aderman, and I'm sure there's a Blake Aderman out there, and I bet he does a hell of a job at whatever he does. But this is Blake Alderman, so Blake, let me apologize for that. But anyway, look, one more thing. If there's a pipe dream recruit out there, I think people want to know, because I think last year we learned, the last cycle, that anything's possible. Anything's possible if you win and there's momentum and your NIL strong and kids start feeling that Florida vibe. Who is your pipe dream recruit in this 2026 class where you're thinking, yeah, man, I don't know. It seemed like a long shot, but man, you never know. And maybe the NIL was fantastic. And, this is a guy that you personally think could just be a boon to the Gators if they could get him.
I mean, any high-level offensive tackle for me, whether that be Felix Ojo, whether it be Keeney Pepe over there at IMG Academy, both are I think Ojo is in that 5-star range as far as where he's ranked, and Pepe is pretty darn close there too. Yeah. So with Florida, I mean, you're losing those offensive tackles after this season, and sure, there's you've got Bryce Levitt, you've got some other guys there. Who knows what happens with the transfer portal as far as bringing someone in there that can jump in and be your left tackle for next season. So with Austin Barber moving on after the season, I think Florida's got to really get one of those offensive tackles that could come in and, if not be a guy that's going to press for early playing time as far as being the starter, if not one of those guys that's going to be in the rotation. So I would probably go with Pepe just because he is at IMG Academy there in Florida. Would make a little bit more sense. Ojo, he's taken a visit to Florida this past weekend, but that was his first time. He's from Texas. He's got Texas and Ohio State there in the mix for him. So for me, if you can land a pipe dream type of guy, Pepe would be the one for me because Florida really likes him a lot. They put a lot of effort into recruiting him, and that would be a big step for their offensive tackle room going forward.
For me, it's that Sedarian Morgan kid, the receiver out of Alabama. I just think that guy is such a nature. DeAndre says, hey, guys, love the show. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. Great city, underrated city, man. I know that's not the original Dreamland, but I love that Dreamland out on the hill. So DeAndre's from Birmingham. He says, look, if Florida lands the kid from Parker, and they're talking about defensive lineman, 4-star defensive lineman, Vodney Cleveland, we are getting a good one. DeAndre, we appreciate the input there. That's it. This was a quick one. We just wanted to introduce you to Blake. For anybody that didn't know him, let everybody know he's with us. Make sure you hit the like button and the subscribe button. I'm Keith Niebuhr. That's Blake Alderman, not Blake Aderman.
But if you're mad at Blake Alderman, tweet at Blake. If you didn't like the show, Blake Aderman,
definitely let him know that you didn't like his work. But we appreciate everybody stopping by. And like I said, we're going to try to do more and more of these things. And that's it, Blake. Thank you so much. Congratulations. We're glad to have you on board. And why don't you tell everybody else what you got coming the rest of the day, or if you have anything, or if you plan on hanging out at the beach for the rest of the afternoon. What do you got?
Well, I would love to hang out at the beach for the rest of the day, but I'm going to look at some more stuff. It's the first day. I really want to try to familiarize myself with all the things on the site and get to know those things. I've got a story coming on Florida, getting a high-level target set up with an official visit. I'm going to look at some more potential RPM picks going forward. So I'm hoping that maybe things will slow down a little bit, but I'm trying not to because I know that Gator Nation wants that news.
That's true. Hey, what star is this highly touted guy?
I think that he's a 4 on the strictly on 3 rankings, but if you go in the industry comparison ranking, I think he's a 5-star guy. So he's a top tier type of guy.
Legit, dude. All right. Well, Blake, we appreciate it. Thank you to everybody for stopping by. Make sure you go to GatorsOnline.com right now. Remember, you can join the site. You can sign up right now, $1 for the first week. Give it a try. If you hate it, you can move on. If you love it, You can annoy me and Blake Blake Alderman, even Blake Aderman for the next several weeks. And anyway, all right, that's it. Take care, everybody. Blake, stick around here. Hang on.